Hey everybody, Shawn here from theautomationschool.com, and in this episode of The Automation Show, we're going to take a look at what's new with Rockwell, PLCs, and HMIs, and we're going to do so by looking at the ROKLive 2020 presentations. Now, if you don't know what ROKLive is, it was going to be a live event held in Boston, which I know my friends in Boston were lobbying for some time. I think they actually really wanted to get the Tech Ed held there. But in any case, ROKLive was going to be kind of like a Tech Ed. And due to COVID-19, of course, it turned into a virtual event. And so we'll take a look at the presentations from that event and see what actually, sticks out to me. Now, I'm not going to cover every single slide because a lot of this stuff just doesn't interest me. But you can go to the ROKLive site and see the entire presentation if you want by just using that link at the bottom of the screen there, which is also in the notes. Now, with that said, I do want to say before we get started, a huge thank you to all our patrons who support the show and keep us going over at patreon.com/automation. With that said, let's go over to the computer here. And really the first subject that stuck out to me from ROKLive was redundancy for the 5580, those new controllers, programmable automation controllers for the 7056 line that, have the built-in Ethernet port. And, this allows you to continue to use the same RM2 modules, as far as I understand, but move to the 5580. So you can see they talk about it here. And let's go to the next slide here. I think it has a little bit more information. And so you can see first release, you're requiring an RM2, just like with the 5570s. Configuration is still done through Studio 5000. And you can have up to 7 communication modules in the primary and the backup racks. Now, the cool things, though, because it's 5580, memory is not reduced when utilizing the redundancy solution. So previously, you had to, a lot of times we'd say 50%. Here they're saying 100% extra memory if you're doing redundancy. But with the 5580, that's not the case. So that's really cool. They're also adding in support for the new Flex 5094 I/O platform, and we're hoping to get some. We reached out to Rockwell to see if we could get some samples of that, but that's the 5000 version of the 1794 Flex I/O, which we have on the wall here behind me. So we'd love to get our hands on some of that new 5094, but now this new redundancy option supports that. And here's another big difference is that previously, whenever we wanted to do redundancy, I remember an OEM getting ready to ship a system and the redundancy wasn't working. And he's like, hey, I checked that little checkbox in Logix 5000 and redundancy is not working. He didn't realize that you always had to wait about 6 months to a year after a version came out for it to get redundancy support. And when it finally came out, you had to get a .5 or greater firmware for your controllers for it to work. So let's say you got version, I'll just throw something out there, let's say 16, right? Well, firmware 16 didn't have redundancy support, even though version 16 had that nice little checkbox in the software. You had to wait till 16.5 came out. And thankfully, in that case, it had just come out like 2 weeks after he realized he didn't have the firmware. So he was in good shape. But now they're saying you don't have to worry about that anymore. When version, for instance, for this case, like version 33, when it comes out, that firmware will be out. It'll be ready for regular systems and redundancy day one. So be interesting to see if they can keep doing that. But that's very cool. That's a huge benefit to people who do redundant systems. They also added the ability to use the new P controller or process controller. I think we got some more slides on that, so we'll talk about that. So that was redundancy. Here you can see the, some of the things you can do now and some of the things planned for the future. Things in the future for the 5580 redundancy would be 2 processors in the rack, sequence manager support, and 5069 I/O. So you can see that there. So someday, hopefully, you'll be able to just use the built-in gigabit port and not need the RM2s. That would be great, but that is not released as of today. Okay, so here's another nice advantage is the ability to use redundant Ethernet modules in the remote chassis. So if you remember with control net redundancy, each module had 2 ports on it. If you wanted to get the redundant control net modules, I don't know if I have, this one is not redundant, so it only has 1 port on it. But you know, that wasn't really redundant modules. It was just a module with 2 redundant ports on it. So with this new development, using the EN4TR, apparently, you can put 2 Ethernet modules in your remote racks in the redundant system. So you actually have redundant, you know, network cards in that remote rack. So interesting. It looks like that would be a very expensive option, but it's available. Okay, and then of course we talked about the Flex 5000 support for redundancy. And here you can see they're showing dual LANs. Okay, next up are some new 5580 controllers. We have a no stored energy version. You may remember that the L30 had an NSE version for the compact Logix, and that's great when you need to power off the chassis and have no stored power anywhere in that system. You know, maybe it's a mine, maybe it's a refinery, but that's what this is. Now, the downside of that is, you know, your clock's not going to continue to run inside your controller because there's no power to, you know, to keep it going. So there's no capacitor, no battery. So in cases like these, you'd probably need to sync your time to a time master somewhere on the network, because the time, if you're using the time in the controller, it's not going to be right. There's also a 5580 Extreme controller, minus 25C to plus 70. Okay, so that's a XT version. And let's see what else we have here. And then we have the process controller. Now, these process controllers support Plant Packs 5.0. And if I understand this correctly, this is what they're calling it, a superset controller, because there's new instructions, new Plant Packs instructions built right into the controller. You know, today when we're using Plant Packs with the standard controller, we have to download and add all the AOIs. Apparently with this, there's those instructions are built into the firmware. That's what I'm getting out of this. Sounds very interesting, although I don't know if the adoption is here. This may be really best for DCS migrations, right? So you just want to have everything in the controller. You don't want to have to add a bunch of stuff. You want to just pull it out of the box, put it in, and have it support everything you need it to support. And there's also plans for a 5380 version of that as well. I have not played with this. I'd love to get the guys on Rockwell to talk about this, get them on the podcast. But in any case, very interesting stuff. As well as a 5380 SIL3 controller. So you can see there, dual embedded gigabit Ethernet ports, you know, scalable all the way up to SIL3, CL3, PLE. I know that's alphabet soup, right? But you can see the versions and the, you know, what different sizes they come in here. But if you're doing safety on a compact Logix line, this is definitely going to be an option. Okay, and here you can see the different I/O modules, the Compact 5000 safety modules versus the Flex 5000 versus the 1756 safety modules. So now all the major lines have those modules either out or coming, which is, you know, just gives you options, right? Now, this was interesting to me. This is some new Flex 5000 I/O modules that came out. We can see here 32-point digital modules, which is great, like an IB32, OB32, right? Very helpful there. And of course, with this terminal block, you know, you should have enough room on that terminal block to wire everything directly in, unlike with a lot of the modules that are high density, where you have to go to an external terminal block. AC modules, right? Now, I haven't been following Flex 5000 very closely, but you know, definitely, if you're doing AC, you want 16 points per module. And then so isolated heart and analog specialty modules. So you got heart in, heart out, and then a serial module as well. So yeah, I guess it's good to have a serial module for the Flex, but you know, I don't know that's one of the hottest modules out there, but it's still something I love to play with. You can also see there's XT versions of some of these modules. All right, and this chart kind of sums it up. This is everything that's out for the Flex 5000. What was in release 1, what was in release 2, and the serial accessories coming in the second quarter, so that's around this time. And looks like the product line has really grown over the years. Now, the one thing I love about Flex 5000 and Flex IO is the ability to mount it vertically, right? So if you have a pole or something or a beam they need to drop some IO on, that's great. And you know, with these higher density modules, it makes it really worthwhile. Skipping ahead, a lot of the modules are now available with conformal coding. That's very important if you're in a harsh environment. I don't think most people need it, but if you are in a harsh environment, it's good to know that that is available now. I thought this was very interesting. A new switch. This is one of those Rockwell / Cisco systems, and a Rockwell switch with embedded Cisco technology. And this is a modular system, so you can buy a 10-port gigabit switch and then add additional ports onto it as needed. So, it would be nice if they had a smaller than 10-port, right? Because sometimes you only need 6 or 4, but in any case, it's a new switch. It comes in both a fixed layer 2 style and then a modular layer 2 or layer 3 switch. So those are your options there. All right, and that was it for the PLCs. Now, let's take a look at what's new with HMIs. Okay, so here we'll see that, first up is Rockwell apparently acquired this Italy-based ASEM company, and they make a lot of, I guess, industrial monitors and computers and panel PCs. So they go through these slides talking about the different phases that they'll release new products. And I mean, it's great that they're expanding their line. I don't know about having the AB meatball right there in the top middle. Almost looks like a webcam staring at you, or a Cyclops. But in any case, I mean, for those of you who use industrial computers and use Rockwell, this is definitely, some nice new products. I'm preferential to these little IoT type computers. I think they're great for, thin clients or zero clients, But in any case, I'll just go through these quickly. There's just a bunch of different products that they're going to be releasing here. Okay, and that brings us to the PanelView 5500 series, right? So we have the 5500 and the 5300 series. And what's new here? The only thing I saw new here with the hardware is conformal coding. So not much new, just conformal coding coming this fall. So there will be some new stuff on the software. We'll talk about that later. There's also this slide about COVID-19, and I'll just boil this down for you. They basically say they recommend you use isopropyl alcohol not to exceed 70% concentration to clean their HMI screens. So that's that. You can see the tech note up there. It's QA3878 if you want to know more about that. But this is kind of what they've always said, and this whole slide just pretty much reinforces that. Now, this isn't really new for June of 2020, but I still wanted to show it because I don't know that everybody knows about this. I got a lot of friends who work in the food packaging industry, and this is a version of the PanelView Plus 7 Performance that has a stainless steel bezel that's rated for IP69K, and that means it can take that high pressure, high temperature washdowns. It also has a food grade silicone gasket, which is replaceable. So the combination of those two definitely could be a huge benefit. If you're using the PanelView Plus 7 and you're worried about that, then this is definitely an option. Now we go into the FactoryTalk View SE12. Now this is supposed to be coming out in August or September, and a lot of new things going on here, but we'll just go right into the slides on this. First, they're refreshing the look of FactoryTalk View Studio. Now I'm kind of like, I don't know if I'm going to like this. I guess I won't know until I try it, but they're making it more modern, more like Studio 5000. And, if you look at it here, you can see it on the screen there, right? Yeah, so I don't know. It took me a while to get used to having the property panel and Object Explorer docked on the right-hand side. Now they're going to put a toolbox on the bottom left and, change some other things around. So it'll be interesting. I mean, great that they continue to modernize it and update the look and feel, but it's been the same for so long that sometimes change is difficult, right? Here's some of the enhancements, including a searchable toolbox, the ability to quickly zoom in and out using the control key, being able to filter the Object Explorer for graphic elements. This one I do like, better support on large resolution, high resolution monitors like 4K monitors, and better multi-screen support. So they've enhanced the screen print command, so you can specify which screen do you want to print. So apparently they support up to 6 different screens currently. So that's good. If you want to print out a specific screen, you can now do that instead of doing the whole thing. Then there's also this. I think this is a good feature too. Is you can now put your graphic displays into different folders, up to 3 folders deep. Now, this doesn't affect what's on the hard drive, right? They're still all in one folder physically on the hard drive in the project folder, right? And it doesn't affect, so they say, the display command. So if you say display main menu or display trends, it doesn't matter if you now put those in folders and subfolders. You know, there can still only be one screen with that name, so the display command still works. So that's all good, right? So assuming that all works as expected, I think this is great. It's just a great way to keep things organized. I know I'm working on a big project for the automation school right now for our 3rd generation courses, which all our current students get for free. So, you know, just if you're looking for some training, head over to the automationschool.com. You get the current course and you get the new course for free. But, you know, having lots of screens in there, it gets old, and you're really working on your naming conventions to try to keep everything sorted in the right order. So this is definitely a welcome advantage. Although I won't be able to use it for that project because I have to give the screens to the students who use, you know, who take the Factory Talk courses. I give them to them in version 8. So if they have an older version of the software, actually I had somebody on the automationforums.com talking about how they only had Factory Talk View 5. So, but I can't go back that far. In any case, this would be a great feature for anybody using 12 and up. What else do we have here? New reduced price option for the redundant license. So if you're doing a pair of redundant Factory Talk View SE servers, and you know, you used to have to just buy 2 full price licenses, right? So now you can actually buy a backup license that's 50% the price of the primary license. So I'm sure it does some checking there to make sure you just don't buy 2 backups. But in any case, that's a welcome change. They also have some bundles. A friend of mine was telling me, a very good close friend of mine was telling me, they have some bundled pricing now. So if you're looking at doing a Factory Talk View SE system, ask your local distributor for bundle pricing, see if they have any bundle pricing available, because it's substantial savings. All right, now we're talking about some runtime improvements, and these are pretty good. They came out with a new data grid object that will, I say they came out with, they're coming out with a new native data grid object that will allow you to retrieve and display data from Microsoft SQL Server. Very cool. So right now, there's really no easy way. If it's not some built-in, you know, like if you want to see an activity log or something, that's like a built-in object. But here we'll be able to display, you know, historical data in just a, you know, in a grid format, which is great. They also are adding server-side script execution utilizing Windows PowerShel. Now, I was a big fan of Visual Basic for applications. I remember when it first came to RSView 32. I think it was back in version 5. And they had the little wizard demo where the wizard would go around and do different things. But you know, really big fan of that. When we went to View SE, we lost any type of server-side scripting. We still had VBA on the graphic displays, but a lot of times what we would do is we would execute a script on the server to affect all kinds of different things there. So having this new feature is really cool. And again, I'm not a PowerShel expert. I don't know. You can see here some of the code right here. You can see they're doing an insert to a database to put some data into that database. You know, I don't know if this is going to be able to do everything I used to do in VBA and the old RSView 32, but it's good that they actually are doing this, so there is an option for server-side scripts. Now this is another big one too. Support for SVGs, scalable vector graphics. Now this is something I'm seeing a lot of vendors implement. You know, the issues with BMPs, of course, and PNGs, right? And so being able to go to SVGs gives you just an ability to make your objects look better on larger or high def, you know, 4K screens, right? In addition to that, they're adding support for Symbol Factory 3.0. So if you've been using Symbol Factory the last few years, it's starting to get dated. You know, when it first came out or first came to Factory Talk View, it was like great, right? But in the projects I've been working on lately, it's very dated, you know, for the automation school. very dated. So getting version 3 of this is great, and being able to have like that truly scalable vector graphic images in your project is just great. So that's two very much appreciated additions to the product. Now, when it comes to factory viewpoint, they've done a lot of little things to it, but this was one of my favorites. The ability to hide the header and status bar, right? So before, you were stuck with those. So that took up a lot of real estate, right? Sometimes you want to use the entire screen as your canvas. So I really appreciated them adding in those features in the 12 so that we can hide both the status bar and the header. All right, so now we're getting into what's new with FactoryTalk View Machine Edition. Not a lot here, but there was an update for the XY chart to allow it to show current data versus ideal data. So that's a welcome feature. I know a lot of people would like to use that, but you know, it's just coming out now. You know, we'll see. We'll see how many applications actually make use of it, but it's a great feature. And another one, which I really like, I'm kind of surprised it wasn't in the product to begin with, but the audit has been enhanced. The audit log has been enhanced to capture when recipe values change in the recipe file. So now anytime somebody goes in and changes a recipe value, it will be logged. So that's good. I'm kind of curious why it wasn't there to start, but it's good that they added it. On the downside, and we've known this, Rockwell's been very upfront about this, version 12, when it comes out, it will no longer support making old version 5.1 or 5.0 MERs, okay? So that is the old pre-CE 6.0 versions of FactoryTalk View ME. So that would be all of your standard PanelView pluses, okay? Not your 6s and 7s, but all your standard PanelView pluses. So if you don't have VMware and you only have a single version of FactoryTalk View installed on your computer, you want to stay with either 10 or 11. Those are the versions that can do the conversion from the old 32-bit to the 64-bit without an issue, but they still can make those old 5.0 and 5.1 runtimes. So you probably, if you got old original PanelView pluses in your plant or that you have to maintain in service, then you probably don't want to go to 12. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now we get into what's new with View Designer. And, you know, they're adding a lot of features to V7, a lot of stuff that's been in the PanelView Plus for ages. And probably the biggest one is the alarm history viewer. You know, having HMI without historical alarms, it's tough to make that useful. I think almost every application I've seen in the field has had an alarm history viewer. You know, they've had, you know, if they use alarms, which maybe that's half of the HMIs out there, right? You actually use the alarming feature. If they use the alarming feature, you have to have a historical viewer. You have to be able to go back and see what happened in the past. I mean, that's one of the troubleshooting thing is to go in the HMI and say, okay, what happened when I wasn't here? And that's how you troubleshoot what's going on with the system, right? One way, anyways. So that's great. That's a much needed feature. And they also added, though, this is great, exporting of the alarm history to an SD card or a USB drive. So that's a nice add. I wish that was something that PanelView Plus had from day one. Configurable screen updates. And I think we have slides on each of these. So let me just go down here and we can see the alarm history viewer. And looks like they did a bang up job adding it in here. Now it'll only store 40,000 alarm transitions, but that should be enough, right? I know some of the older products only did 32,000. So 40,000 alarm transitions, that's a fairly good amount, especially if you design your alarms correctly so they're not coming on and off all the time. The other thing is that you can sort the comms. It's a very feature-rich object here. And it even maintains the alarm history through downloads and power cycles. That's huge. That's really huge. Okay. Really, it's from what they're saying, the only way to really wipe it is to, without actually clearing it manually, is to do a firmware update on the unit, which when you do a firmware update on a unit, it's kind of like formatting it and reinstalling everything, right? The thing I like here, something I asked for in FactoryTalk View for the longest time, was support for both tag-based and instruction-based Logix alarms, okay, in one viewer, right? And so that is something we never did get. Like I wanted HMI tags and FactoryTalk alarm and events in the same object. and we never did get that to my knowledge. As a matter of fact, I think FactoryTalk View HMI alarms, I think that was going away in version. Did that go away in 11 or 12? I thought that was something that recently was removed as well. And so here's where you can clear it manually by issuing a command, putting a button there to issue a command to delete the history. Okay, and you get these predefined buttons in history all built in for you. So you don't have to actually create the screens from scratch if you don't want to. And here you can see the export alarm history option here. That's all built in. And now this is the one we were getting to, is the configurable screen update rates. Now, I think they did a great job putting this in. In my experience, you cannot go slower than a quarter second, because that means it could take, worst case, 3/4 of a second to update from the time you press a button to the time you see indication on the screen that something's come on. If you try to use 500 milliseconds, that's great for a data screen, but for any type of control screen, I found that the operators end up just pounding on the buttons more than once because it's just taking too long. You know, we're all kind of in that, well, many of us are kind of in that, like, we expect things to, operate right away, be quick and fast. So, but having these options are great. I think 500 milliseconds, again, for any type of navigation or data display screen is perfect. 250 milliseconds is, to me, the slowest you go for a control screen where you're actually stopping and starting stuff. And then 100 milliseconds is that's usually what I do. Some of the other products like FactoryTalk View support 50 milliseconds as well, but 100 milliseconds is, you don't see a huge difference between those two. So this is a good start. I'm glad they did this. And one of the things that happens here is if you choose 100 millisecond screen update rate, and the panel can't do that, right? Now, to me, I'm thinking, why wouldn't the panel be able to do that? But let's say you put, I don't know, 10,000 numeric displays on the screen. I don't even know if that's possible. And then you put it at 100 milliseconds. It may not be able to read all that data fast enough. So what the terminal will do is, if it's starting to bog down because it's trying to refresh the screen as fast as you want it, it'll actually slow it down. It'll say, look, my processor's pegged. I can't do this as fast as he wants it. I'm actually going to slow it down to keep the terminal from locking up and becoming unresponsive. And I think that's a great thing that they talk about, that they do that. And they even give you a new system tag that, like we typically do on computers, we'll put like an FPS monitor up on the screen. But here they give you a current screen update rate system tag where you can actually display that to see if you're getting your 10 times a second update or if it's coming in less because it's just too busy. So I think that's a great feature. Glad they added that in there. And I think the last thing we'll cover here is, time to make the leap. Time to transition from RSView 32. Now, I was surprised that RSView 32, now is the time to make the leap, because it is old, really old. I was a beta tester for RSView. I love the product. I even designed Space Invaders and Star Trek LCARs in it. And it's just a great product. I mean, you guys know, because I've done some recent videos on RSView 32. And but yeah, it doesn't hold up, except for animation, which it does so much better than FactoryTalk View, faster, I should say. Yeah, it's really showing its age. It's really an ancient product. And I guess it would be a good time to migrate. The one thing where you may have a problem with migrating, I mean, since day one, since the version 1.0, FactoryTalk View could input RSView 32 projects, right? A lot of people didn't know that, but from version 1.0 of FactoryTalk View, you could input RSView 32 projects. But, without any server-side VBA, a lot of applications, I say a lot, a small percentage of applications, there was no real easy way to migrate them. So now that they're adding that server-side scripts, that should take care of almost all of the applications. Now, I haven't looked at, we didn't have recipeing for a while. So we had Recipe Pro. That was an issue. So now we have recipeing. So really, we should be hitting all of those features, the mainline features like SPC and Messenger. That's definitely not something that they're adding the FactoryTalk View that I know of. But when it comes to, trending, we have much better options in FactoryTalk View now. And with Recipe and being in there, Recipe Plus versus Recipe Pro, and now the server-side scripting, I would be really hard-pressed to find a feature you wouldn't have. Again, without having HMI tag alarms, there's some things that you'd have to change there. Go to FactoryTalk Alarm and Events, but the tag-based FactoryTalk Alarm and Events is much nicer than the old tag-based alarms. So cover that in great detail in my Factory Talk View course. And yeah, it's just much better to use. A little bit more complicated, but much better. And here you can see the step forward incentives to migrate. So if you are going to migrate from RSView 32 to Factory Talk View, definitely contact your local Rockwell representative or authorized distributor, because they can definitely get you some savings off the new software. And they may even be able to point you to some tools to help it, or integrators if you're an end user. Point you to some integrators who are experts in both packages and can make that conversion for you. If an integrator knows both packages, they would probably jump at doing one of these projects, because it can be a lot of fun to do. Most of the graphics will come over, the tags will come over, so it's a nice project to get your hands on. And those are my picks from ROKLive when it comes to the PLCs and HMIs and SCADA. Don't forget, you can see the entire presentations and actually the videos of the presentations over at Rockwell's ROKLive website. I'll put a link in the description. And I do think you have to register, and then they email you a link to get access to them. But still, you get full free access to all of it. It's great. So in any case, before we go, I do want to ask you, if you know anybody who needs training, to please come visit me over at theautomationschool.com. I'm getting ready to film a ton of new lessons for all of the courses, and all this new content will be free for people who buy either the standard or extended editions of my courses over there. So I wanted to let you guys know that. There's a lot of new stuff coming out this year and next, and some stuff that came out last year that I want to add to the courses. So all that content is free to customers of my standard and extended courses. We're also doing a promotion. We have a summer sale going on, so check that out. You can save some additional cash there. And I just want to thank all my patrons who support the show. They get a free copy of the entire season of the Automation Show. They get lifetime streaming and downloading just for being a patron, as well as they get, depending on the tier, they get, access to our insider news and behind the scenes videos, as well as free downloads and more. And with that, I want to thank you for watching and subscribing. We're getting really close to hitting 11,000 subscribers, so thank you all very much. I hope you all have a very safe, happy, and healthy week. And until next time, my friends, peace.